Mike, it's been 20 years since we were at Quecreek, and that is really hard to believe. Do you consider that one of your career highlights?
Yeah, for sure. Especially what you and I reported on in the year prior uh, to Q Creek. We were anchoring. I can't believe it was 20 years. If you were to ask me, I would say maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Right? Doesn't it feel like it was only a couple of years ago?
I remember it so well. We have some video we're going to show people. This is when they're banging on the pipe. And as you remember, they were stuck. Nobody knew if they were really alive, really down there. And they were waiting on that moment, on that banging to come back. And they heard something back and they thought, well, somebody's alive. So we've got to do the best we can, right?
Yeah, I remember being on the set with you the night before, and that's when we got the notification. And I remember after our 11 o'clock newscast talking about, hey, this is something we better call in tomorrow morning because maybe you and I could go out there and start reporting and getting ready for the next day's newscast. And just seeing this video for the first time in a couple of years, it does bring back a lot of memories of us going out there the very next day and not really knowing if any of the miners survived at this point.
I'm going to turn the comments on, Mike. And so if anybody wants to join in and tell us where you were 20 years ago when you heard the news or heard about the rescue, we're going to we're going to share that. Joseph Pratt says, "Hello, Mike and Michelle. Thanks for chatting. We're interested to know where you guys were when all this was going on." Again, Mike, let's talk about this. This was the field. This is Dormel Farm, and we were watching this from the news desk, and we realized we would probably the next day have to go out there again. It sounded like a catastrophe.
Yeah, this was a mine that there was so much water below. They didn't know if anyone could have survived being trapped down there because there was, as you mentioned, Michelle, they didn't know where they were trapped exactly under there. And they were kind of just taking a guess. And I think I remember the very first conversation with one of the property owners, Bill Arnold, there. He
Hmm.
was approached, and I remember him saying something to the effect of, "Look, this is my property. Wherever they are, drill down, get those guys out. If you'd have to knock my house down, do it. We just got to find those guys."
We can see Sky 4, and this is a little blurry, I know. I tried to pull some video of the water, but you can see the entrance of the mine is what Sky 4 is showing right there. And that's what we saw. We came the next day, early Thursday morning. You and I arrived, and all we knew is the whole entrance to the mine was completely flooded out. It was hard to believe anybody could survive that.
Right, and they were pumping that water out for quite some time.
Millions of gallons.
Yeah.
Charlie Hardway is writing in. I have told you a few times, I vividly remember your coverage. Our coverage was nonstop. The whole world was watching this, and we were watching. You see the water being pumped out there. This is part of where the air hole pipe is going down. It was 6 inches. So they knew if the guys were alive that they wouldn't be able to breathe, that if water wouldn't kill them and they would drown, the carbon was all around them, creating dangerous gases, stealing the oxygen. They knew they needed to get oxygen down there, and so that's the first thing they started doing is drilling that oxygen.
Right. I remember Joe Spifoni. He was one of the point people in charge, making those best guesses as to where the miners might be trapped, where they were working at the time. And I remember the air pipes, the first one that went down that was so vital to the recovery of the miners. And Michelle, I don't know if you remember, but we arrived at the scene and the emergency management officials had the parking lot for the media to assemble. And across the street from the parking lot, there was a church up on the hill.
Hmm.
And that's where the family members were gathering. They were gathering to pray. They were gathering to be together and get the information all at the same time. And I remember seeing the same first responders that you and I had seen, 10 months prior at the crash of Flight 93. And there was so much hope that they could get these guys out alive. And
Hmm.
that's what all of this video you're showing brings back to my memory.
I have a picture. This is a photograph of our crew. We were all there covering it. That's when we first arrived. At this point, we didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
if they were making it out or not, but that's the parking lot we were staged in. Uh, yeah, we had no idea what was getting ready to happen.
We had no idea how many hours it would take to even find out if they could get to the guys and communicate
Mhm.
to the guys. And that very first video you showed, again, that brings back memories because they were banging on the pipe. And Michelle, you and I were just talking before we turned on the camera, and they weren't sure if anyone was alive, but they thought they heard a faint response, um, someone banging on that pipe as well, right?
They thought they heard something. Now, this video you're seeing is when he secretly said, thumbs up, all nine are alive.
Oh
And
yeah.
here, let's listen to the governor now. Let me turn this up and this is the moment right here. Let's see, Mike.
All nine are alive. And we believe that all nine are in pretty good shape.
You remember that moment?
I just got chills. That was Governor Mark Schweiker.
Right.
Um, and it brings back so many memories. I remember our crew. You showed the crew there. Our videographers, they were incredible at gathering information because we were pretty hunkered down there. We had to be live in all of our shows. And I remember Dan Henninger was there, being our
Yeah.
executive producer.
I'll
But
pull up that picture. This is our amazing crew. And this is not everybody because Art Carr was taking the photograph. So he was integral too, but he's behind the camera here. But wonderful photographers, Dan Pratt, Dan Henninger, a manager at the station, John McKee, um, Pat Walsh, Ken Murray. It was a nice group. We didn't know at the time that this was going to be something that would just really be a highlight of our careers, though.
yeah, and not knowing the outcome, we had to be very measured. Uh, the information, wasn't coming in very quickly, and we talked to a lot of people in Somerset who responded, who tried to help out in any way they could.
Colleen
And
said she slept in front of the TV that night to watch. She's commenting here. Thanks for saying something, Colleen. So many people. Let's see. Donna says, I remember being glued to the TV watching you guys. You did a great job reporting. Um, yeah, it was exhausting too. We were there from Wednesday night till Sunday morning, and then you even stayed beyond through into Sunday, I know.
yeah, I left a few hours before the rescue. My son Matthew had a baseball tournament back in Pittsburgh, and that was the end of the season. And I remember sleeping over, not really sleeping over, but staying up in the van. Um, I was assigned, we didn't know when they would get out, but that's the night before. And I think you got about a 40-minute nap or
Something like that.
for a
It's all a
while.
blur. I don't remember. I just remember thinking, against all odds. So we would be interviewing people and we would
Yeah,
be saying to them, this video down. We would be saying, like, what are the chances? How far are you? And a lot of it was a guess. And what I
yeah,
was just showing, let me get back to this, were these air compressors. And so they had an idea to do something that had never been done in America before, and that's create an air bubble. Remember? They just
yeah,
thought if they're there, if we pick the right place, if they're alive, we can create an air pressure bubble to keep them alive. And we would be interviewing people, and they would say, we hope it's working, but we don't know yet. And we kept doing updates, and then remember the drill bit broke.
yeah. And they had to order one out. It took a while to
It
to,
took a
to get.
while, and the bit got stuck and clogged the hole, so they started drilling a second hole, but then they unclogged the first hole, and it was just so tense.
Yeah,
Here's
our job was to be reporting it, and we weren't in constant contact with the families. But you and I talked. I remember, off camera back then. Imagine if you were a family member and you had so much hope. They got this drill and they're going down, and then what happened? Everything has to stop for another piece to come in, not
18
knowing.
hours. And I
Yeah,
talked to the miners this week and said, what did you guys think when the drilling stopped? And they said, we didn't know. We thought they gave up. They ran out of gas. It wasn't working. We just didn't know.
you talked to the miners in this past week. I'm curious. I want to hear more about the letters they wrote to their families, not knowing if they would get out. That must have been an excruciatingly painful process to pour out your heart on paper, knowing that this could be farewell to your loved ones, right?
Randy Fogel, and I'm showing his rescue right now. He was the foreman, and he said to the guys, "We have about an hour. The water's rising. I'm guessing we have an hour. Let's write notes." They tied themselves together, chained themselves somehow together, and they wrote goodbye notes to their families. I asked them about it. 20 years later, they are still not wanting to share anything that they wrote. They're going to keep that private. But you can just imagine, that they thought that was it. But then all of a sudden the water stopped rising. And then the drilling started up and they held out hope and they were very strong. Here's something else that I just found out today. So this is one of the miners, John Unger. See that smile? So I talked to him this morning. And I said, well, surely, Mike Clark and I are going to talk about this, and you've seen the video of you smiling. And he said, no, he has never seen the video. So someone who is watching that knows John or his family, tag them in this video so he can see himself being rescued. Lots of guys gave a thumbs up that they were okay. John, though, came out with this huge smile. Let me see if I can show you it again. There's a tight shot of him. Look at him. He's alive. He was trapped for
Wow.
77 hours and he could just smile. And this is what else he did. So when the communication device went down in the hole, they had quiet on the site. Everybody had all the drilling stopped, the work stopped. They were listening with the microphone down. And the guy said, when he put the microphone down, "Are you the miners?" And John said, "No, we're Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Of course we're the miners. Who do you think is down here?" I'd always heard that he said something sarcastic back.
And that was it.
So allegedly, he told me that himself. Allegedly, that's what he said.
That's incredible. Yeah, just seeing the face of John Unger again. And again, I've not seen him in a number of years. You and I went back at the first anniversary. It was like a town hall almost, really a celebration of life. And I remember these guys are great human beings, but we never would have known their names had it not been for this. And they became celebrities overnight. I remember doing a story on John and some of the miners. They would go around to schools and give students lessons in hope and resiliency. And they never wanted to be celebrities,
No.
but the whole world watched this rescue.
Yeah, you see the governor there on the side raising his hands, high-fiving everybody. It was just quite a moment. And you're right, Mike, they didn't expect this. And when we interviewed them back then and now, they just kept saying the people above ground, those rescuers you see, are the real heroes because they kept working without sleep, around the clock, digging, thinking the guys might not have even made it past the water or the carbon dioxide that might kill them.
Yeah.
They didn't know if there would be a collapse. And the guys, the crew above ground just deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah. Michelle, this past couple of weeks putting these stories together, it's fabulous. Yeah, you did a fabulous job putting these stories together. You have another one coming up tonight on the anniversary. What can viewers expect tonight when they tune in?
Yeah, thanks for asking. That's going to be tonight. One of the things is the guy you're seeing here is Dennis Hall, known as Harpo. And here I talked to him at the 1-year anniversary. He passed away in May. And so I'm going to bring this back and we're going to talk about Harpo, who is a hero himself. And I'll tell you why. Harpo is the one who, as soon as the breach happened, so for those of you not familiar, the underground map was wrong. They didn't know it, but they were right next to an abandoned mine that was filled with millions of gallons of water. When they breached that, immediately Harpo got on some sort of communication phone and called another 9 miners. that weren't too far away. They were nearer the exit, though, and said, run for your lives. Those 9 barely made it out. They waded through water. They survived. And that's all thanks to Harpo's quick action. Um, so we're going to talk about him. I asked them all kind of questions, how it felt to come up. One of the guys, Boogie Pugh, told me it felt like the Steelers had won the Super Bowl. He came up out of darkness. There was lights all in his eyes. People were clapping and cheering. He said that's what it felt like, the Steelers winning the Super Bowl. I'm also going to have something on this. Okay, this is Tom Foy, one of the miners, obviously. And this is a picture of him when he was rescued 20 years ago. This is a moment, Mike, if you can see this, of
Yeah.
Tom getting back into the capsule for me. So this is at the Quecreek Museum. And Tom, there's Governor Schweiker, all the guys are talking. Let's see how much video. So they're kidding around, and Tom Foy goes up to it and is showing me how it works. And somehow he decides he's going to get back in that thing. So
Oh
for the
my
first time
goodness.
in 20 years, he kind of shows me how the bottom collapses down so you can stand on it. And he just decides, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to get in that thing. And so this was quite a surprise. So I have his reaction, and this is the thing that saved their life. They'd never used, this is a new thing. It wasn't like a planned rescue capsule. It was something they had, and the guys had to squeeze in.
Yeah. Michelle, take me back 20 years. That went down 9 times. How did the miners decide who goes first and who goes
Yeah.
second?
So the first guy it went from heaviest to lightest. So Randy was number 1, and he was also the foreman, and he was having some sort of chest pains. So they wanted to get him up. But all the miners saw him squeezing in as, really tight, and they thought, well, if Randy Folk can fit in there, I can fit in there. So they were all really relieved, they said. And so here's a picture of Randy coming up. See how tight. Oh, that's a
Yeah.
tight squeeze. But once he made it, all the guys thought, yeah. And if you remember, they told us it might take an hour or more per guy. We
Right.
thought it
Yep.
was going to last until sunrise, but it was like 15 minutes or less per guy coming out of that thing.
Yeah, with all the twists and turns, with the starting and the stopping and the drill bit, and the waiting. I have to wonder if you're the 8th or 9th miner to come up. You're wondering, geez, let's hope things continue to go smoothly here.
So many other things. Yeah, watch the miners. Lots of people watching, and they're commenting now, Mike. I have oh, here's something else I can show. This is Poppernack, the last miner coming up, and I think we zoom in, if my memory serves me. We have so much file footage.
Yeah.
Shout out to Ryan Recker. He found a lot of this footage for us back in the room. But if you zoom in, this is the last guy, Mark Poppernack. He's very camera shy, I'll just say. He's a hard one to interview. He was the last, so he was down there for 15 minutes or more by himself.
Wow.
And you can see he takes his gear off. They all take their hat off and put it right back on, and he gives a thumbs up. And he was the last one, and yeah. Yeah,
I'm
that's very
curious, Michelle.
something.
You went back out. You talked to the guys. I'm interested to know what are you thinking about when you see these guys again? And 20 years have passed. They've helped so many others in the past 20 years in so many different ways. I'm curious to get your thoughts.
I just think they're an inspiration, and they are very humble, all of them. And when you talk to them, they only talk about the rescuers above ground who saved them and how grateful they are. And I asked them, why do you think this happened to you? One of them said, I didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't, I wasn't being punished. And I said, I know, I didn't mean that. I meant, God obviously thought that you could handle it and come up and share your story. And so they talked about, what they talk about, which is never giving up, trusting other people, trusting God, never giving up hope,
Yeah.
because, miracles can happen. What about you, Mike?
Well, I just think of what they've done in the past 20 years. We've heard that they they helped other miners deal with a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And the psychological strength for these guys to survive this. Some went back to mining after this.
Mm-hmm.
Some didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's what I think of. This. None of them wanted the spotlight. None of them clearly wanted this ever to happen. They knew the risks of mining because this is such a difficult job. I just think of how many lives they've been able to positively impact in the last 20 years. And like it or not, we're going to applaud them tonight when your story is on, because they certainly deserve it.
Mm-hmm. And when I was talking to them about the dangers of mining, they said, we never considered water. We knew there could be a collapse. There's a rock with our name on it. Lots of stuff could happen, but not water. So there they are thinking they're going to drown.
Wow.
And they were really mad about that they'd never prepared for something like this. But they made it out. Don't you think it was a privilege to be there for that?
For sure. I remember the next morning I went back out, and I believe I replaced you. And we did an hour broadcast. And I remember Connie Stewart, our wonderful producer, we did an hour special on Bill Arnold's property. And we brought in all the folks who had something to do with the rescue. And it was almost like a Super Bowl celebration,
Mm-hmm.
because so many people worked so hard. 77 hours, I can't believe it. It seemed like a lot longer, didn't it?
Oh,
Because we were pretty much
yeah.
awake for all 77 hours. And so was the rescue crews. And
Yeah.
I remember it was just a big, a super celebration. It was a really sunny day, that Sunday night for our broadcast. And I don't know, I'm just really looking forward to, look, you had the privilege to go out there again and talk to everyone. I'm just really looking forward to your story tonight.
It'll be tonight, and I don't know the time yet. I think the producers will decide that later on today. But at some point tonight on our newscast, we'll talk about that and reflect and remember. Governor Schweiker is there with us
Great.
talking about it. But what a moment in time.
And
So
so many people continue to make it a point to visit that site. I mean, look, that there are miners working throughout the country. They make a pilgrimage to come to the museum and to check things out. Was anybody there in the lead up?
Not when we were there, when we did our interviews, no. But Bill Arnold said that, a lot of tour groups come and they go to 9/11, and it's so somber, um, and that was so significant in the war on terror and the heroes of Flight 93. But then they go to Quecreek, which is just down the road, and the ending is so much different. And there's jubilation, and it's good for the tour groups. But he said people come from all over the world, and they all have watched it. John Unger, one of the miners, told me someone from New Zealand met him and said they stayed up all night watching the rescue in New Zealand.
Wow.
News coverage was everywhere.
Yeah. And I like the fact that it really put the spotlight on the women and men, Michelle, who work 24/7 to keep us safe, who are the first on the scene to respond when things like this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And many of the same folks responded both to the crash of Flight 93 and Quecreek. So it's nice to put a spotlight on them. I think, their work is much more appreciated when you see anniversaries like this. We remember their 24/7 sacrifice. That's another big part of the story.
Yeah. Well, it's nice reflecting with you, Mike. We've done a lot of news events together, and I can't think of a better ending than this.
Yeah.
Just pure joy.
Yep. 1995, August 28th. That's when I first met you, our first time on the air, and we're coming up on an anniversary of being co-anchors together, and I'm privileged to share this time with you. You've taught me so much about social media and so much about technology. I appreciate you having time to include me in your social media kingdom this morning.
Of course, you're a big part of this. I would not leave you out. And kudos to all of our behind-the-scenes crew that was there. We just have amazing people at Channel 4. So thank you to all the photographers and producers as well who worked on this with us. All right, well, tonight, we'll see the story tonight, kind of a longer version of this, but it's nice reflecting with you, Mike.
Yeah, great catching up.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.
I'll see you tonight.
Bye.